Okay, now the second part of the roofing system that also helps you to regulate the temperature of your goat pen is to have two layers, or like a double layer roofing system. Now what that looks like is this. Now if you observe this roof, you can see it is slanting downwards this way. So I want you to imagine if what we had done instead was that it's as it was slanting this way, if the entire roofing system was done in such a way that you don't just have one flat roofing sheet, you have roofing sheet that stops halfway, and then another roofing sheet that is somewhere here, probably like an 8-inch gap between both roofing sheets, and then slanting downwards. This is not that kind of roofing system, so maybe that's why it's a bit difficult to explain. But if what I'm saying is that instead of just having one flat roofing sheet that flushes all the way from the back to the front, what you have is that the roofing sheet is flushed from the front to somewhere in the middle, and then another roofing sheet starts from just underneath that one, but at a different height of about 8 inches lower, and then that one is the roofing sheet that slides to the end, so that you have an air gap somewhere in the center of your pen that can allow hot air to escape. So those are the two ways that you can actually make sure that you don't create a cloud of hot air within your goat pen, and then you also make sure that your goats do not suffer from heat stress from an overheated pen. So we're still on the topic of housing. Now, like I said, I broke it down into two sections. I said the things that you must consider are your roofing, your flooring, and then the vents, of course. So now with the flooring, why it is called a slatted floor is because it has splits on the floor. Now what you're seeing here is a replica of what you probably get with a pallet, a shipping pallet. So what we tried to do here was to create a flooring system that allows for easy drainage of urine and feces. So you can use like a 2x2, you can use like a 1x3, but you don't want a situation where you'll be using boards that are too wide. The essence of this flooring is to be able to allow feces and urine to flow through and allow for easy cleaning. So you don't want to use boards that are too wide, because if they are too wide, then they can still harbor bits of urine and feces, and it might start soaking into the wood. So what you basically want is a 2x2 or a 1x3. And then the spacing here, I prefer to have a 1-inch spacing, or basically something that can allow your thumb, just your thumb, to be able to pass through. The idea behind not making it too spacious is that if you make it too spacious, you can have the hoofs of these animals trapped, and it can cause really serious injuries and even fractures to them. So you want a situation where the spacing is not too wide, not bigger than an inch, or like I said, something that can allow just your thumb to fit in. And also when you start having baby goats, you don't want a situation where a newborn goat that is still getting used to walking has his feet stuck in between these things, and then it can be a really catastrophic situation if nobody intervenes. So that's the basic reason why you don't want it to be too wide apart. So that's that. And then another thing about an elevated slatted floor that I haven't mentioned is the elevation itself. I prefer to have an elevation of no less than 3 feet from the floor. So when you're raising your goat flooring, you should have it at least 3 feet above the ground, because the essence of the elevation is not just to allow the free flow of urine. You also want to create like a ventilation underneath the house, so that the ammonia that is produced, because the feces and urine produces ammonia, so the ammonia buildup can also flow out. The ammonia gas can also flow out. Plus, it makes it easier for you to occasionally clean underneath the house. So you can just get a rake and clean underneath the house, or get someone just go under there and have it cleaned. The advantage of an elevated flooring is that you can raise goats from when they are born to when they are sold and never have to go under to have it cleaned, because it takes a lot of time before you would need to go underneath and clean it. So like I said, no less than 3 feet above the ground. The split should not be more than 1 inch, or just something that can fit your thumb. And then the boards you're using should not be too wide, so that it doesn't allow accumulation of urine and feces. So, and then once you have done this, ventilation is basically about being able to just allow for air to move from one side of the pen to another side of the pen. And then you can support this by having things like this. You can have tarpaulins and nylons that you can fold and roll up when the weather gets really cold. You can just fold it, or when you have rains that when it rains on a windy day. So what these nylons do is to prevent water from, or rainwater from being blown into the goat pen. So that covers basically everything. And then of course the feeding trough is positioned in such a way that the goats can only put their heads in and they cannot get into that place and mess it up, because if you don't create this sort of demarcation, most of them will jump in it. They'll have their foot in it. Some might even defecate or pee in it, and the moment that happens, they stop eating it. So that will create feed wastage for you, and then it also can cause the spread of coccidiosis, because it can be very mischievous. So it can also cause coccidiosis because when they have their feces in contact with their feed, then they can absorb this coccidia parasite that multiplies rapidly in their stomach and causes them coccidiosis. So it's important to also have the feeding trough or your feeding system in such a way that the animals do not have access to defecate and pee in them. So that basically covers everything you need to know about the elevated housing system. Thank you.